HBO's hit show Silicon Valley returns for a third season on Sunday. The network also announced today that Silicon Valley, along with Game of Thrones and Veep, are also getting renewed for new seasons in 2017. I sat down with the executive producers of Silicon Valley, Mike Judge and Alec Berg, along with their secret weapon, former Twitter CEO Dick Costolo, who joined the show this season as a consultant. I started by asking about the fate of Richard Hendricks, the show's main character, who was fired from his company Pied Piper at the end of last season in an epic cliffhanger.
When we started sort of doing the research for this season, we talked to a lot of different people about, well, what would actually happen if a guy like Richard got fired from a company like that? And it was really interesting. All of the engineers that we talked to, we said, would the company work without Richard there? And they're like, no, of course not. It's an engineering-based company. It would never work. And then we talked to VCs, and they were like, yeah, we get rid of founders all the time. What's the problem? So everybody had a very different idea of what reality would be.
So, Dick Costolo, what was the dose of reality that you brought to the writer's room?
As I was saying earlier before we were on air, it would be hard to understate my influence on anything you're going to see this season, other than sitting in the back of the room and going, yeah, you can totally do that. That would absolutely happen. Yeah, you can keep going. It's usually a lot worse than that.
Was there anything where you said, no, absolutely not?
Very rarely. It was usually, yeah, you can make it more dramatic than that.
So what was it like having a real CEO in the writer's room?
It was amazing, and we get stuck a lot because we try and hew as much as we can to reality, and a lot of times we'll come up with something and we're like, all right, we better call some people and ask them whether this would actually happen or not. And having him in the room was amazing, because as we were thinking of things, we could be looking at him going, is this real? Would this happen?
And I imagine, you're an improv comedian by background. I imagine this was also kind of fun.
Yeah.
Was this like a dream come true?
No, it was 100%. I think it was about 3 weeks before I deigned to suggest, I thought I would have things I'd think, I have an idea for a line, but everyone in the room is so talented and funny and, coming up with these amazing things that it was a while before I even, basically got back to the room.
And as I understand it, Mike, you've said that you actually did draw on Dick's own experience leaving Twitter. Is that true?
And replacing people at Twitter. And it was great because, well, not only Dick used to be a programmer, so there's occasionally technical questions, but also the big moves of people being fired and hired, and just all the ins and outs of this world. It's just great having somebody right there. We had all read the Twitter book, and sometimes I'd find myself going, well, in the book, oh yeah, no, he's right here.
Yeah, right.
On that note, Dick, you and I have talked about how you had to deal with a lot of scrutiny, a lot of public scrutiny at Twitter, as does, Richard and Pied Piper. Twitter has been portrayed in a certain way by the media, by certain authors. Is it as dysfunctional inside as it is portrayed in public?
Look, I think the reality of what goes on inside these companies is always a lot different than however it's portrayed in the media, whether it's being portrayed as things are going amazingly well or it's being portrayed as things are really dysfunctional. The reality is always completely different on either side.
Now, Twitter is responsible for driving major changes in the way we watch television and the way we consume media. When you guys were building the show, what did you think about Netflix and Amazon, and why did you ultimately decide to go with HBO?
Well, this started out with it was always going to be HBO. It started out originally as them pitching me the idea of doing a show about gamers and game developers, and
HBO pitched you.
HBO, yeah, and I had thought about that, and I don't know that world well enough, and that's a world where if you get it wrong, boy, they'll just eat you alive, those people. And I thought I'd stand a better chance against programmers. So yeah, it was always going to be HBO.
What do you think about the whole binge viewing? Would you ever want to put all the episodes out there at once? Is that?
Yeah. Oh, you mean?
Yeah, the way Netflix does.
Who knows? That's kind of HBO's decision, and there's HBO Now, and it's all changing. So yeah, I suppose it's possible.
How much creative freedom do they give you guys?
Unlimited.
Do they ever say just only 2 dick jokes this season?
No, they'll take all the dick jokes we have. No, they don't cap the dick jokes at all. It's uncapped. No, they're great. They're great. There's no limitations. There's no content issues.
Now, one of your writers for the movie Idiocracy tweeted recently, "I never expected Idiocracy to become a documentary, a jab at Donald Trump." Are you surprised by how far Trump has made it? Didn't expect that one.
Yeah. I am surprised.
Anyone?
Go with Mike.
Well, how about this, Dick? Nick Bilton, who wrote the Twitter book, just wrote a piece in Vanity Fair alleging that Silicon Valley created Donald Trump, specifically social media, and we know how often Trump uses Twitter. What do you think of that allegation?
Well, I think he understands how to use those platforms. Donald Trump, I'm referring to. He's quick to tweet very early in the morning, sort of before the press cycle has gotten going, so he can be out there in front of it, and then the press cycle becomes about whatever it was he wrote at 4 in the morning or something like that. And so I think he's just got an understanding of how to think about and leverage these platforms in a way that he's used to his advantage.
He suggests pulling the plug on social media entirely in order to prevent a Trump, I don't know, a Trump future.
Nick Bilton.
Yeah, Nick is proposing that.
Nick's crazy and he's wanted by the authorities.
Give us a without too many spoilers, give us a preview on the season.
Well, we sort of pick up right where we left off. Richard's just been fired, and the big conflict at the beginning of the season is, what does Richard do? Does he fight his way back in? Does he start his own competing company? So that's kind of where we started, and those were the questions. We always do a ton of research at the beginning of every season, and those are the questions we were asking. What would actually happen? What would actually, what would the repercussions be?
Does the bubble play much of a story line or lack thereof?
It's referenced.
And Dick Costolo's thoughts of whether we're in one or not?
Yeah, I don't have any thoughts about whether we're in one or not. It's referenced in the.
It is, yeah.
The writing.
We were talking about, just as Alec and I were researching that, we'd be hearing somebody talk about a deal like WhatsApp and flipping the value of users and all this stuff, and just kind of going, are we in a giant bubble here? I mean, I'm not an expert, so I probably shouldn't be talking about this on Bloomberg, except that we keep thinking, okay, well, if the bubble hits, we'll Chiron on like 9 months ago or something.
Yeah, that was
because we're writing it as if it, but we mention it.
Like between when we shoot it and when we air, the bubble bursts, and now we're suddenly like a period piece.
Well, Dick, you're not just in the writers' room at Silicon Valley. You're actually a venture capitalist, like a real venture capitalist now. So, what do you think
about whether we're in a bubble or not?
Right. What do you think about the current climate?
I think the climate is sort of has adjusted over the past several months, and Gurley wrote a great piece about it this morning in his Above the Crowd post about financings and recaps that are coming, and founders and investors are going to have to get used to some down rounds on some of these companies that have gotten way out over their shoes, and that's out of their skis rather. So that's probably obviously the case, and those kinds of things are good.
So you're a coach to young founders. What are you telling them about the environment? How are you advising them?
I'll just tell them to be more thoughtful about how they're spending money. It's probably going to get worse before it gets great again, or easy again, because people are just being a lot more thoughtful about not getting way so far out of our skis again. So that just means you have to be a lot more thoughtful about how you spend and keeping costs under control, and thinking about things like gross margins a lot earlier than you might have 2 or 3 years ago.
So you're working on something new in addition to investing. All I know is it has to do with fitness, early stage. What can you tell us?
Building a software platform for group fitness, like small groups of people, 5 to 10 people that are working toward common goals, and should have something to show in a few months.
Now, the premiere is Sunday.
Yes.
Are you nervous? How do you feel right now?
I mean, what's done is done at this point. It's in the network's hands.
Nothing we can do about it.
So, I mean, how long do you guys want to keep doing this show?
I don't know. As long as it stays interesting. Personally.
Yeah, I always think of these things kind of like the way the alcoholics do, about like just one day at a time. And I think, we write the season, we rarely talk about what we're going to do next season.
No,
I think just because it's daunting enough just doing one. But I mean, I don't know. These kind of series seem to go. What did girls went 6? Is that right? I think they seem to go 6. That'd be great.